Part 2, The Big Wave. But in the summer, Kino had to work on the farm and his father needed help. Even Setsu and the mother helped when the rice seedlings had to be planted in the flooded fields on the terraces. And they helped too when the grain was ripe and had to be cut into sheaves and threshed. On those days, Kino could not run down the mountainside to find Jaya. When the day was over, he was so tired he fell asleep over his supper. But there were days when Jaya also was too busy to play. Word came in from the fishermen up the coast that a school of fish was passing through the channels, and then every fishing boat made haste to sail out of the bays and inlets into the main currents of the sea. Early in the morning, sometimes so early that the light was still that of the setting moon, Jaya and his father sailed their boat out across the silvery sea to let down their nets at dawn. If they were lucky, the nets came up so heavy with fish that it took all their strength to haul them up. And soon the bottom of the boat was flashing and sparkling with the wriggling fish. Sometimes, if it were not seed time or harvest, Kino went with Jaya and his father. It was an exciting thing to get up in the night and dress himself in his warm, padded jacket tied around his waist, even in summer. The wind was cool over the sea at dawn. However early he got up, his mother always got up too and gave him a bowl of hot rice soup and some bean curd and hot tea before he started. Then she packed his lunch in a clean little wooden box, cold rice and fish and a bit of radish pickle. Down the stone steps of the mountain path, Kino ran straight to the narrow dock where the fishing boats bobbed up and down on the tide. Jaya and his father were already there, and in a few minutes the boat was nosing its way between the rocks out to the open sea. Sails set and filling with the wind, they sped straight into the dawn-lit sky. Kino crouched down on the floor behind the bow and felt his heart rise with joy and excitement. The shore fell far behind them, and the boat took on the deep swell of the ocean. Soon they came to a whole fleet of fishing boats, and then together they flew after the schools of fish. It was like being a bird in a flock, flying into the sky. How exciting it was to pull up the fish. At such times, Kino felt Jaya was more lucky than he. Fish harvest was much easier than rice harvest. I wish my father were a fisherman, he would tell Jaya. It is stupid to plow and plant and cut the sheaves when I could just come out like this and reap fish from the sea. Jaya shook his head, but when the storm come, you wish yourself back upon the earth, he said. Then he laughed. How would fish taste without rice? Thinking of eating only fish. We need both farmers and fishermen, Jaya's father said. On days when the sky was bright and the winds mild, the ocean lay so calm and blue that it was hard to believe that it could be cruel and angry. Yet even Kino never quite forgot that under the warm blue surface the water was cold and green. When the sun shone, the deep water was still. But when the deep water moved and heaved and stirred, then Kino was glad that his father was a farmer and not a fisherman. And yet one day, it was the earth that brought the big wave. Deep under the deepest part of the ocean, miles under the still green waters, fires raged in the heart of the earth. The icy cold of the water could not chill those fires. Rocks were melted and boiled under the crust of the ocean's bed, under the weight of the water, but they could not break through. At last, the steam grew so strong that it forced its way through to the mouth of the volcano. That day, as he helped his father plant turnips, Kino saw the sky overcast, halfway to the zenith. "Look, father," he cried. "The volcano is burning again." His father stopped and gazed anxiously at the sky. "It looks very angry," he said. "I shall not sleep tonight." All night while the others slept, Kino's father kept watch. When it was dark, the sky was lit and red and the earth trembled under the farmhouses. Down at the fishing village, lights in the little houses showed that other fathers watched too. For generations, fathers had watched earth and sea. Morning came, a strange fiery dawn. The sky was red and gray, and even here upon the farm, cinders and ash fell from the volcano. Kino had a strange feeling when he stepped barefoot upon the earth that it was hot under his feet. In the house, the mother had taken down everything from the walls that could fall or be broken. And her few good dishes she had packed into straw in a basket and set outside. "Shall we have an earthquake, father?" Kino asked as they ate breakfast. "I cannot tell, my son," his father replied. "Earth and sea are struggling together against the fires inside the earth. No fishing boats set sail that hot summer morning. There was no wind. The sea lay dead and calm as though oil had been poured upon the waters. It was a purple gray, suave and beautiful, but when Kino looked at it, he felt afraid. "Why is the sea such a color?" he asked. "Sea mirrors sky," his father replied. "Sea and earth and sky, if they work together against man, it will be dangerous indeed for us." "Where are the gods at such time?" Kino asked. "Will they not be mindful of us?" "There are times when the gods leave man to take care of himself," his father replied. "They test us to see how able we are to save ourselves." "And if we are not able?" Kino asked. "We must be able," his father replied. "Fear alone makes man weak. If you are afraid, your hands tremble, your feet falter, and your brain cannot tell hands and feet what to do." No one stirred from home that day. Kino's father sat at the door watching the sky and the oily sea, and Kino stayed near him. He did not know what Jaya was doing, but he imagined that Jaya, too, stayed by his father, so the hours passed until noon. At noon, his father pointed down the mountainside. "Look at old gentleman's castle," he said. Halfway down the mountainside on the knoll where the castle stood, Kino now saw a red flag rise slowly to the top of a tall pole and hang limp against the gray sky. "Old gentleman is telling everyone to be ready," Kino's father went on. "Twice have I seen that flag go up, both times before you were born." "Be ready for what?" Kino asked in a frightened voice. "For whatever happens," Kino's father replied. At 2 o'clock, the sky began to grow black. The air was as hot as though a forest fire was burning, but there was no sign of such a fire. The glow of the volcano glared over the mountaintop, blood red against the black. A deep-toned bell tolled over the hills. What is that bell? Kino asked his father. I never heard it before. It rang twice before you were born, his father replied. It is the bell in the temple, inside the walls of the old gentleman's castle. He is calling the people to come up out of the village and shelter within his walls. Will they come? Kino asked. Not all of them, his father replied. Parents will try to make their children go, but the children will not want to leave their parents. Mothers will not want to leave fathers, and fathers will stay by their boats, but some will want to be sure of life. The bell kept on ringing urgently, and soon out of the village a trickling stream of people, nearly all of them children, began to climb toward the knoll. I wish Jaya would come, Kino said. Do you think he will see me if I stand on the edge of the terrace and wave my white girdle cloth? Try it, his father said. Come with me, Kino begged. So Kino and his father stood on the edge of the terrace and waved. Kino took off the strip of white cloth from about his waist that he wore instead of a belt, and he waved it, holding it in both hands high above his head. Far down the hill, Jaya saw the two figures and the waving strip of white against the dark sky. He was crying as he climbed and trying not to cry. He had not wanted to leave his father, but because he was the youngest one, his older brother and his father and mother. Let's make sure this focuses in. He had not wanted to leave his father, but because he was the youngest one, his older brother and his father and mother had all told him that he must go up the mountain. We must divide ourselves, Jaya's father said. If the ocean yields to the fires, you must live after us. I don't want to live alone, Jaya said. It is your duty to obey me as a good Japanese son, his father told him. Jaya had run out of the house crying. Now, when he saw Kino, he decided that he would go there instead of to the castle, and he began to hurry up the hill to the farm. Next to his own family, he loved Kino's strong father and kind mother. He had no sister of his own, and he thought Setsu was the prettiest girl he had ever seen. Kino's father put out his hand to help Jaya up the stone wall, and Kino was just about to shout out his welcome when suddenly a hurricane wind broke out of the ocean. Kino and Jaya clung together and wrapped their arms about the father's waist. Look, look, what is that? Kino screamed. The purple rim of the ocean seemed to lift and rise against the clouds. A silver-green band of bright sky appeared like a low dawn above the sea. May the gods save us, Kino heard his father mutter. The castle bell began to toll again, deep and pleading. Ah, but would the people hear it in the roaring wind? Their houses had no windows toward the sea. Did they know what was about to happen? Under the deep waters of the ocean, miles down under the cold, the earth had yielded at last to the fire. It groaned and split open, and the cold water fell into the middle of the boiling rocks. Steam burst out and lifted the ocean high into the sky in a big wave. It rushed toward the shore, green and solid, frothing into white at its edges. It rose higher and higher, lifting up hands and claws. I must tell my father, Jaya screamed. But Kino's father held him fast with both arms. It is too late, he said sternly, and he would not let Jaya go. In a few seconds before their eyes, the wave had grown and come nearer and nearer, higher and higher. The air was filled with its roar and shout. It rushed over the flat, still waters of the ocean, and before Jaya could scream again, it reached the village and covered its fathoms deep in swirling wild water, green laced with fierce white foam. The wave ran up the mountainside. Picture and visualize. Until the knoll where the castle stood was an island. All who were still climbing the path were swept away. Black were swept away, black, tossing scraps in the wicked waters. The wave ran up the mountainside until Kino and Jaya saw the wavelets curl at the terrace walls upon which they stood. Then, with a great sucking sigh, the wave swept back again, ebbing into the ocean, dragging everything with it, trees and stones and houses. They stood. Then, with a great sucking sigh, the wave swept back again, ebbing into the ocean, dragging everything with it, trees and stones and houses. They stood, the man and the two boys, utterly silent, clinging together, facing the wave as it went away. It swept back over the village and returned slowly again to the ocean, subsiding, sinking into a great stillness. Upon the beach where the village stood, not a house remained, no wreckage of wood or fallen stone wall. The words are curling at the edge, so I can't see them. There we go. Stone wall. No little street of shops, no docks, not a single boat. The beach was as clean of houses as if no human beings had ever lived there. All that had been was now no more. Jaya gave a wild cry, and Kino felt him slip to the ground. He was unconscious. What he had seen was too much for him. What he knew, he could not bear. His family and his home were gone. Kino began to cry, and Kino's father did not stop him. He stooped and gathered Jaya into his arms and carried him into the house, and Kino's mother ran out of the kitchen and put down a mattress, and Kino's father laid Jaya upon it. "It is better that he is unconscious," he said gently. "Let him remain so until his own will wakes him. I will sit by him. I will rub his hands and feet," Kino's mother said sadly. Kino could say nothing. He was still crying, and his father let him cry for a while. Then he said to his wife, "Heat a little rice soup for Kino and put some ginger in it. He feels cold." Now Kino did not know until his father spoke that he did feel cold. He was shivering and he could not stop crying. Setsu came in. She had not seen the big wave, for her mother had closed the windows and drawn the curtains against the sea. But now she saw Jaya lying white, pale, and still. "Is Jaya dead?" she asked. "No, Jaya is living," her father replied. "Why doesn't he open his eyes?" she asked him. "Soon he will open his eyes," the father replied. "If Jaya is not dead, why does Kino cry?" Setsu asked. You are asking too many questions, her father told her. Go back to the kitchen and help your mother. So Setsu went back again, sucking her forefingers and staring at Jaya and Kino as she went. And soon the mother came in with the hot rice soup. And Kino drank it. He felt warm now and he could stop crying, but he was still frightened and sad. What will we say to Jaya when he wakes? He asked his father. We will not talk, his father replied. We will give him warm food and let him rest. We will help him to feel he still has a home. Here? Kino asked. Yes, his father replied. I have always wanted another son, and Jaya will be that son. As soon as he knows that this is his home, then we must help him to understand what has happened. Let's leave it here for today.